The clock on the mantel read 5 minutes to midnight when the pounding started. Not a knock, a pound, the kind that doesn't ask permission. Walter Grimes, 90 years old, sat up slowly in the dark, his hands trembling not from fear, but from the particular exhaustion of a man who had already survived everything the world could throw at him. Through the thin curtains, red and blue lights strobed across the ceiling of the only home he had known for 53 years. On the porch outside, two men in hard hats were already moving his furniture to the curb, and on the top step, placed there by Walter himself before they could touch it, sat a folded flag, crisp white edges, perfect triangle. The kind they hand you at a funeral when words aren't enough. Walter had lived on Caldwell Street since 1971. He had raised 3 children in that house, buried his wife of 47 years from that front porch, and spent every morning since sitting in her chair by the window, drinking coffee the way she used to make it. The house was paid off, every nail, every beam, every faded patch of wallpaper, minus his. Until 6 months ago, when a property development company called Apex Urban Group began quietly buying up the entire block. They had offered Walter a price that would have insulted a much younger man. He had declined twice, so they found another way. A disputed land title, a technicality buried in paperwork, 60 years old, and a midnight eviction order signed by a judge whose campaign Apex had quietly funded the year before. Walter didn't fight it. He didn't have the strength left for lawyers and courtrooms. He just placed Margaret's flag on the step, sat down in her chair, and waited. If you believe that no man who served his country should ever be thrown into the street, minus that loyalty has to mean something. Minus, please, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Because what happened on Caldwell Street that midnight is something this town will never forget. The eviction crew worked without speaking. Box after box appeared on the lawn. A lamp Walter had bought for Margaret on their anniversary, a framed photo of his army unit, class of 1953, a small wooden cross she had kept above the kitchen door for 40 years. A neighbor, Mrs. Flores from number 12, had come to her window in her dressing gown. She watched for a long moment, then quietly went back inside. Nobody came out. The crew, foreman, a thick-necked man named Briggs, barely glanced at the old man in the chair. To him, Walter Grimes was a line item, a delay, a problem to be processed and moved on from before sunrise. "Sir, you need to vacate the premises," Briggs said flatly, not looking up from his clipboard. Walter looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at the folded flag on the step. "That is my wife," he said quietly. "You mind not putting your boot so close to her?" Briggs stepped back half an inch. "Not from respect, from inconvenience. Not one pair, not two. A river of them, rolling slowly down Caldwell Street from the far end, low and amber in the midnight dark." The sound came first, minus a deep, collective rumble that seemed to rise up from the ground itself, filling the quiet street like the approach of something that could not be stopped. 14 motorcycles, riding 2 abreast, slow enough that every neighbor who hadn't yet come to their window came now. They parked in a line that stretched half the block, engines cutting one by one into silence, and in that silence a tall man climbed off the lead bike, grey at the temples, a long scar along his jaw, a black leather vest with a single patch above the heart, minus a small silver cross inside a pair of outstretched hands. His name was Elias Booth. 10 years ago, he had been a military chaplain. He had held dying men in 4 countries. He had folded flags, just like the one on Walter's porch step, and handed them to wives, mothers, daughters who would carry the weight of them for the rest of their lives. He had left the church eventually, not his faith, minus just the building. He had traded his collar for a vest and found that the road asked the same things of him the pulpit once had. Show up. Bear witness. Don't look away. Someone had called him 2 hours ago. A neighbor. A woman who couldn't come out herself but couldn't stay silent either. Elias walked up the path without hurrying. He looked at Briggs. He looked at the boxes on the lawn. He looked at the wooden cross lying on its side in the grass. Then he looked at Walter. Elias sat down on the porch step beside the folded flag. Not above it, not over it, beside it, the way you sit beside someone who is grieving. Tell me about her, he said. Walter blinked. Of all the things he had expected anyone to say that night, it was not that. Margaret, Walter said slowly, his voice finding steadiness it hadn't had all evening. 47 years. She made terrible coffee and she knew it, and she never stopped making it anyway. Elias smiled. Sounds like someone worth fighting for. Behind him, without a word spoken, the 14 bikers had formed a quiet line across the front of the property. Not aggressive, not loud, simply present. A wall of witnesses that Briggs and his crew suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of. Briggs stepped forward, clipboard raised. This is a lawful eviction. I have paperwork. Elias turned and looked at him. Just looked. The kind of look that has heard last confessions and stood at open graves and does not rattle easily. So do we, said a voice from behind him. A younger biker named Ray stepped forward. In his civilian life, Ray was a real estate attorney. He had spent the last 2 hours on the phone after that same neighbor called, pulling the Apex Urban Group filing records. What he found had made him drive 90 miles an hour to get here. The land title dispute Apex had used to trigger the eviction, filed using documents with a forged notary stamp. Every legal move they had made against Walter Grimes was built on fraud. Briggs made one phone call. Then he made another. By the time he hung up the second time, the hard hat was off and the clipboard was under his arm, and he was walking back to his truck without meeting anyone's eyes. The eviction was suspended pending investigation. Walter watched the trucks pull away from his porch, still in Margaret's chair, his hands folded in his lap. He didn't cheer, he didn't cry. He simply looked at the folded flag and breathed. She would have liked you, he said to Elias. I doubt that, Elias said. I've got a terrible poker face, and I suspect she'd have taken everything I had. Walter laughed. It was a small sound, but it was real, and it had been a long time coming. 3 weeks later, Ray filed a formal complaint with the state attorney's office. The forged documents were verified by 2 independent examiners. Apex Urban Group CEO, a man named Drexler, who had never once set foot on Caldwell Street, found himself facing a fraud investigation that made the front page of every local paper in the county. The story spread the way stories do when they carry something true at their center. A journalist picked it up, then a news channel, then another. Within a month, 3 other families who had been displaced by Apex Urban Group's paperwork came forward. The investigation widened. Drexler's photograph, minus taken outside the courthouse, his attorney's hand on his arm, his face, carrying the particular expression of a man who had confused power with permanence, minus ran above the fold. Walter watched it on the small television in Margaret's chair. He didn't say much. He never had been a man of many words. But every Sunday morning after that, 14 motorcycles could be found parked outside 44 Caldwell Street. The bikers came with groceries, with tools, with bad jokes and loud engines, and a particular kind of loyal company that Walter had not known he was missing. Elias always arrived last. He would sit on the porch step in the same spot where the folded flag had rested that midnight, and they would drink coffee together. Terrible coffee. Walter always insisted on making it. Elias drank every cup without complaint. You don't have to keep coming, Walter told him one morning. Elias looked at him over the rim of the cup. I know, he said simply. If this story reminded you that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off, minus that some people carry their conscience with them wherever they ride, minus please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who still believes in doing what is right. And subscribe to Kindness Corner. Before you go, tell us in the comments. Is there a veteran in your life who deserved better than the world gave them? Tell us their name. They've earned that much. Because somewhere on Caldwell Street, an old man is sitting in his wife's chair, drinking terrible coffee in the morning light, and the flag on his porch step isn't a symbol of what was lost anymore. It is a reminder of who showed up.